Morgan Thomas Show, brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
What's up, everyone? It's the Morgan Thomas Show. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas. As you can see, a little bit different tonight. I hope this is working. I hope it's working for you. Houston, your mic's on mute there. We can see that, so we want to make sure you're off mute. But welcome in. As you can see, it's a little bit different, not by plan. I went through today on my day off because today is my birthday. I'm 34 years old today. And on my day off, I was messing around with my computer and misplaced some of my fancy graphics that I love to have. And so we have punted and moved on to another program to that at least thankfully I had set up as kind of a backup. But thank you so much for joining in, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or even Periscope tonight. We've got 3 different locations for you. Make sure you like and share the video and let us know. We'll check out the comments to make sure everything's working. Got my phone here to make sure everything's working. So again, thank you for all the love and support over the past couple of years with the show, but also thank you for all the happy birthday wishes from everyone. Really, really appreciate it. But again, we got myself, Big Al, actually down at the bottom now because he joined late. I guess it's all first come, first serve here where you get it on the screen. So Big Al down at the bottom. Welcome, Big Al.
Hey, first of all, I cannot be more upset with you for telling everybody it's your birthday. I saved my happy birthday all day for this moment, and you wished yourself a happy birthday before I could even get to it. So forget you. I'm no longer celebrating your birthday. I do not care anymore that you're 42 or whatever it is that you are. But, hey, look, I got to be honest. It's a lot easier to be on here after a big Clemson victory, but we're going to take it. I'm glad to be here. We're going to talk Clemson's football. We're going to be giving, emotional support, whatever we need to do, but we're going to dissect this thing and let's get it going.
It is the episode 94. We're getting ever so close to 100. And it is that show after the loss that we all dread because there's a few things we have to address from our previous show. But it is the Sugar Bowl loss emotional support show. So welcome in. And Houston, I know you, of all people, need the emotional support. So thank you for joining tonight and welcome in.
Yeah, so first off, if you do see this button pop up on my screen, it's because I'm worried that there might be a crying child nearby. And that's the only reason that I'm doing that. So folks at home, if you see the mute button on, I'm aware. I just want to make sure that my newborn daughter, who is very temperamental at times, around the time that she goes to bed, we want to make sure that she's nice and happy and keep her quiet and get her to sleep, which she's starting to do, which is great. But yeah, rough weekend. Not happy about the game. I'm not as doom and gloom. I mean, look, I was pretty ticked on Saturday, but at the same time, as going on into the future, I feel like there's just simple ways to improve and Clemson to be right back in the same spot next year and be able to actually move to the championship round.
Yeah, I think they will be as well. And we'll talk about that. We've got a big lineup coming up. I had everything pulled up and now it's gone, but we're definitely going to talk about previously, the game against Ohio State Friday. We're going to talk about what went right. I like to start out with the positive stuff. So we are going to talk about what went right first, and then we'll move into some things that we think that we saw in the game. Hopefully, maybe you saw as well. You can put in the comments what you thought, maybe if you felt differently than what we felt like happened during the game, because we want to get your opinion. That's what this show is all about. It's not us talking the entire time. Well, as Alan would say, it is me talking the entire time, but we want to get you to talk as well. Again, the questions tonight: what did Clemson do right against Ohio State? What went wrong against Ohio State? Should we be concerned about the blowout loss? And will Clemson return to playoff status in 2021? And then we'll talk about the recruit, Tristan Leigh, that committed the day after. So made you feel a lot better if you're a Clemson fan right after that. And then we might, if time permits and Bill doesn't get all over us, we might talk a little basketball as well before the show is over, because now we can kind of transition into it because there is no more football.
Well, we're
already hit him before I even say that we should talk about basketball. So, Bill, I knew you were waiting on it. But again, if you're in the chat, thank you so much. It's a little bit weird for me because this is a different program. I know Casey's in here. Casey and Sluggo and Seldom Used Reserves, this is the program they use, but I'm not really familiar with it. But I see YouTube chat, I see Facebook chat, all in one. That's really nice. But Bill, Darth, Casey, John, Joanne, Giggled, Kevron, Tiger Paw, thank you so much, everybody, for getting in. And even myself, I'm in there as well. But let me see if I can. I did put up our sponsor photo. Let me see if I can put this up. Yeah, so Black's Tire Inc., family owned and operated since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help answer your questions, check out Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina, or give them a call, 864-647-9292 for all your tire, brake, alignment needs, or just ask a question. Like I said, Dale and Preston have been family friends of ours, and we appreciate them supporting our efforts in the podcast/YouTube channel, and we hope you get in as well and support them. But back to what we were talking about here. So got a lot of people already getting in, guys, saying, you know, Casey obviously already said we want to establish this first, that there are not very many shows that are emotional support shows, thankfully, because of how awesome Dabo Sweeney and company have been. And I don't want to get too negative. I don't want to get too extreme, but I do want to address some concerns that we felt like happened, because it is a loss. I mean, you've got to learn from your mistakes and then hopefully get better going into the next year. But again, Al, we'll start with you. Overall, I know you want to acknowledge as well, as we get into this emotional support, there may be fans that don't remember, that weren't there when you and I in Houston were there, when, say, Tommy Bowden won 3 games or Tommy West ran the ball 3 times and punted and, you know, couldn't seem to get a first down, much less a touchdown. So we want to acknowledge where Clemson is at and the great run that Clemson has had, but also have a little bit of emotional support going into a podcast after a loss.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I certainly remember all those bad times and those mediocre times. Man, there was a lot of mediocre times, especially in the Bowden years. It always seemed like we were on the cusp of taking that next step and just never could quite do it. And that was very frustrating. So it's been awesome. This run we've been on. I mean, the playoff appearances, the national championships, the ACC championships. It's been insane, and it's a lot of fun. And that, you know, obviously, I think those are going to keep going. I think they're going to continue to be where they've been. I think they're going to be right back in the playoffs next year. In the year after that as well, you know, assuming, you know, health of major players, of course. And I just think this was tough, though. It's not necessarily a bad thing. This is one thing that I think we'll probably get into later about fans, you know, telling other fans how to be fans. I know you had talked about wanting to mention that, and you've got a little sore spot with that, and that's okay. But it's okay to be upset with how Clemson played the other night. I mean, we all predicted Clemson in a win. I don't know if we all predicted them in a blowout, but I'm pretty sure I didn't say a blowout. I think I said 41-20, something to that effect, which I guess kind of appears to be a blowout. But leading up to the game, I was like, you know what? We're going to beat this team by 30 points. And I truly believe that. And it was just, I mean, it couldn't have been more opposite. They lined up and smashed us on both lines, offensive line and defensive line. It was just unexpected. I haven't seen that from Clemson. I didn't expect it. I was not prepared for it. This is truly the most shocked that I've been at any Clemson outcome. That includes the West Virginia game where we got, you know, completely annihilated. You know, I was very disappointed in what I saw. I've never seen a Brent Venables defense look so lost. It was tough to watch. I mean, that's something we're not used to in these past several years as Clemson fans. And again, it's okay to be upset about that. It's not okay to, you know, get on here and just completely bash the program and fire this person, fire that person, cut this person, you know, whatever. None of that's good. I don't think that's the route we need to take. But it's certainly okay to question things and look at what went right and what went wrong in that game.
And yeah, and here's the thing. I think for anyone, I think I speak for most of us when I say, when we ask for change to come out of this, none of us are saying anyone should be fired. It was never uttered out of any of our lips or anything like that. Now, there may be a coach, Lee, or we saw today, Rod McDowell go to ULM. I knew him from a prior job. I texted him congratulations. And I hope he does well at ULM with Terry Bowden. And, you know, Tony Elliott might take an NFL job. Maybe I've seen his name get mentioned a lot in the last week or so, or wherever. We don't know. There's a lot of chips that are about to fall in the next week with the NFL. So we're not asking though anybody to be fired. We just know that with the next year coming on, there are some simple tweaks that I said. I talked to Morgan about this beforehand. It doesn't take much for Clemson to get better from this. A little tweak here with how the defense may be getting a cause in, a little tweak here with your offensive approach, and maybe just some things that in the past you may be a more traditionalist on. I, for one, and I don't know if we'll get into this later, I think maybe occasionally look into the transfer portal a little bit, considering the last 2 years you've had your year ended by 3 transfer players who have murdered you. And so if there's a generational talent out there who's interested in coming to Clemson, you might have to take a look.
That is something that got brought up a lot on Twitter, is should Clemson dip into the transfer portal? They've kind of had that JUCO / transfer portal wall up, that they don't want that. They want to develop players that they bring on from the start. And maybe we can ask the crowd what they think over on Facebook or YouTube about that. For me, Clemson has been able to get to where they're at without that. So I can't say necessarily that it's going to get them to the next level. Do I think it's going to get them to the next level? Well, really, they are kind of at the level where it's Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, and everybody else. Thankfully, Clemson has not fallen off that perch just because of one, bad loss, I guess you could say. And I will say, after looking at the game, there are a lot of things that really, truly, and I hate to be that guy who says this, but really, truly, just simple coaching mistakes. So simple tweaks that could have been done differently that would have helped improve. And also just simple elite player mistakes. And even from Trevor Lawrence himself, mistakes that when you go back and you look and you're like, wow, if that wouldn't have been a bad pass or a too quick to pull the trigger on that pass, that could have been a touchdown. That could have been a first down instead of a fourth down. For example, 4th and 3, Dabo's ready to go for it, and false start from Bockhorst. I mean, just little things like that if you go and look at it, Mark Childress and Mark's been kind of my mentor for the past couple of years, and he's also been my talk me off the ledge guy, and at least for this week. But if you go back and look, I mean, the second quarter really got out of hand, and the fourth quarter and the third quarter were kind of Clemson adjusting, but it was too far out of reach, at that point. If you take out the second quarter, they both scored the same amount of points, but the second quarter was 21-0. And so that's the problem. There was a bad second quarter, and it led to them having to catch back up after halftime. But again, we'll get into it all. We're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves here, because I do want to be kind of like I don't want to start with negatives or what Clemson can do differently, and I also want to be cautious. Anytime we say we during this show, we're talking about us as fans, we as Clemson graduates, because we're one of the few, if not only, shows that have 3 Clemson graduates as hosts on this show. So when we say we have a personal and financial connection to this team, to this university rather. And so we're not necessarily saying that we know anything about the team. We are still a fan show. So I want to preface that too. But we are going to give our thoughts, right? So the first thing I want to do, though, is start out with what went right against Ohio State. What was the positives for Ohio State? And I'll start with a player first, and that has got to be a guy who, I don't think we could have ever thought that we would be saying this, gentlemen, but Cornell Powell, 8 receptions, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tell me in chat what other player would have won the game ball, other than this guy. If they would have won the game, he probably would have been the MVP, in my opinion. Maybe Trevor Lawrence would have been, because the quarterback gets all the awards. But Cornell Powell did his best to will himself and not lose the game on his end of the ball. He did what he could do. He fought for extra yardage. He knocked over Shaun Wade and tried to buff up to him and really kind of help the motivation of the team, try to motivate everyone else around him. Like, hey, we're not backing down from you. Cornell Powell, outstanding job there. Again, 2 touchdowns. and not a guy who we would have even thought would be a key player in a playoff game 2 years ago.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's been a really cool season to be able to consistently echo the name Cornell Powell, because he had really done nothing in his entire career up to this point. And, with the losses of Justin Ross and Joseph Ngata being hurt most of the year and Frank Ladson being hurt most of the year, I mean, he was forced into action as being the guy. And you actually heard all offseason that he was going to be the guy, but we've heard that kind of stuff before. We've heard about, he's turned the corner, he's doing good things in practice. Well, he showed it in games this year. The past, seven or eight games or something like that, he was killing it on the field. It seems like almost every week we were talking about him as Offensive Player of the Week. It was absolutely crazy, and super, super happy for him, super proud for him, which I think also illustrates the fact that you don't need to give up on these guys too early. So many people are willing to label people busts after a bad freshman or sophomore season, and that is absolute garbage. Okay, too many kids in this Clemson program have proven that over time the light can come on, that next step can be taken. So you need to give these people time, or these kids time, these players time to kind of get that going, because every player is different. Some are ready to come in and play as freshmen, some are ready to do it as juniors, some it takes till a senior or redshirt senior year. It just happens that way. It's different for everybody. Everybody's developing at different rates, and that's okay. But yeah, he did a great job in this game as well. So it was a lot of fun to be able to talk about him. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get any support really in this game in particular. It was just kind of a rough game all around. But Cornell Powell with another huge game.
Yeah, I'll say Cornell Powell, outstanding year. I'm going to just say this, Cornell. I think that this year you've excelled enough to where you need to just go ahead and declare. I think you've earned that, and you've made your draft stock go up a lot. And I think if he does declare, if he comes back, great. But if he does declare for the NFL, I got no problems. Kid earned it. He earned it. One of the hardest working wide receivers I've seen, even in the face of a 49-28 loss. He brought it every play. There's not too many comparisons. Like I've said this all year, there's not too many comparisons that you can make to Cornell Powell compared to other wide receivers in Clemson history who were seemingly low down on the totem pole and now is competing to get drafted. I would say probably in the first 2 days of the draft. Outside of Kevin Dodd, there's not many other players that you can compare him to, and I think he did it. I will say, and I know Alcoon mentioned this, and it's being discussed on chat, that the first quarter offensive play calling and the way that we approached the beginning of the game was outstanding. Yep. I thought that first drive, I was like, we came to play. We're coming to end this New Orleans curse. And that didn't happen. But positive, we looked good at the beginning.
Yeah, you know what? I actually was seeing that note from chat as well. I was not expecting Clemson to come out fast. Normally you think Clemson kind of figures it out. It takes them a little while. I was not expecting Clemson to just go down the field. Now, it did take a nice catch, nice kind of, ESPN going to tell you it's a push off, but it did take some physical play from Cornell Powell and a nice catch to keep the ball moving on third down. But he moved it all the way to the 3-yard line, and then Trevor Lawrence ran it in, which he ran it in. You guys see that number 5 Browning, 5-star linebacker. We talked about him previously last week. A graduate player, 5-star guy, elite linebacker. Trevor Lawrence outran that dude. And I told Audrey, I said, man, Trevor Lawrence is a freak of nature. I even tweeted it. I said, after that touchdown, I said, Trevor Lawrence, if he played volleyball, would be one of the best volleyball players out there. Basketball, one of the best basketball players out there. Softball, if he was doing the shag out there, man, he would be the best, or one of the best on the court, on the field, on the dance floor, whatever. And Trevor Lawrence is just a freak of nature, and he can outrun, and he's so tall. It's kind of like Allen out there. I mean, for me, I need about 15 steps to get to the sideline. Allen takes about 2 or 3, and he's already in there. So you do a lot better when you're taller and you got longer legs. But Trevor Lawrence is going to be great, and I felt like that was a good sign that he was running the ball positively. And they were moving the ball positively. And then it just kind of, the second quarter happened, and it was kind of like they changed it up a little bit. And I'll say, and I won't get into any negatives because we're going to stay on the positives. But my second bullet point was that sweep, they did that, that little shovel pass to Amari Rodgers, 9 yards. Houston talked about it. Playing to the sidelines, getting Amari Rodgers involved very often. Also, getting Braden Galloway involved. Rodgers and Galloway got first downs early on in the game, and then they kind of disappeared. I don't really know why. We'll get into it a little bit further on in the show, but positively speaking, I was excited at the beginning of the game to see what Clemson was doing. And so, Al, what are your thoughts too?
Yeah, I thought we had a great plan coming out. I mean, it looked like we were getting to the edges, which is where we were having success attacking those guys. You look, we fell in love with the, that little pop pass, sweep to Rodgers. Heck, we fell in love with it back when Artavis Scott was doing it against South Carolina all over the place. It's a good play. I love getting our athletes in space because we have better athletes than most people, plain and simple. So that was good to see. It was good to see them throwing those, those quick outs that are easy passes to the outside. We were getting 5 or 6 yards a pop on those two. They used the middle of the field and got the tight ends involved, like you mentioned. I mean, that's good stuff. That's this kind of stuff we've been calling for all year. And it was great to see. And Clemson went right down the field and scored. So it was good to see, but man, it just fell apart. They just stopped doing it. I remember one time late in the second half, I think it may have been the fourth quarter. I had a buddy of mine actually post this on Facebook. It's like, we're down however many touchdowns we were at the time, 2-3 touchdowns or whatever it was. And we ran 3 straight runs up the middle. I was like, that hasn't worked since the very beginning of the first quarter. And we didn't even run them up the middle then. We had very early success running up the middle, just a couple of yards here and there, more than we've been getting. So it looked like the offensive line was kind of where it needed to be. And that was not the case the second quarter. It wasn't the case the third quarter. It's like, why are we running 3 straight times up the middle? This is nonsense. So you still had a couple of those what in the world is going on moments, but that first quarter, they looked like they knew what they were doing. It looked like it was going to be an easy victory, kind of a cruise to win for the Clemson Tigers. It just didn't work out that way.
Bill, no lie, I don't know. Bill in chat, I have no idea what your hashtag means. I really don't. I think
I know what it means.
I don't know what it means.
Not Southeast Oklahoma.
But again, I'm not going to apologize for my tweets. I don't think I said anything outlandish. I didn't say anybody needed to be fired. I did say there need to be changes. And I will say that there needs to be a wake-up call as far as I will not say that it is this is just like Alabama. Alabama got blown out by Clemson and they're back. I didn't say that, I think that's 2 different situations. It's apples and oranges. First of all, Alabama changed offensive coordinators, not because they fired him, but they did change offensive coordinators. Their previous offensive coordinator that got, 44-16 or whatever it was, he went to Maryland. And then they got in Sarkisian, right, who now is with Texas.
Actually, their offensive coordinator went to the New England Patriots, and he's about to become a head coach in the NFL this week.
I thought it was the guy that went to Maryland.
No, it was Brian Dable. I'm pretty sure.
No, 2018. It was
Loxley.
Yeah, Loxley, right? And then so Loxley went, and then Sarkisian got it. And so I'm not saying that. I'm not saying any coaches should be fired or let go or anything like that. But I do feel like that there has to be an addressing of 631 yards to LSU and 638 yards to Ohio State. Is Clemson still one of the most elite teams out there? Yes. Is Clemson still had a great run in 6 years? Yes. Am I so proud that I have tickets from 2 national championship games? You better believe it. I am, because my dad has none of them. But I will say this. I don't like getting blown out. We get on here and we joke about blowing all these other teams out. We got to be a little bit chapped about getting blown out ourselves. It can't be okay. I don't want blowouts to Clemson being okay. And let me tell you, struggling to get it within 14 or going down 21 and knowing you're not getting the ball back at halftime, that don't feel good. And I don't want to feel that. And I'm not going to apologize for not wanting to feel that way, because I know you guys don't either. And a lot of people are like this, because I'll say this. Everybody has their own level of acceptable losses or acceptable bad play. You're just not at that level. And I will say, it's okay. It's okay for me, but I am an emotional fan too. So if you know me, if you watch the show, which I know Bill and a lot of you guys do, I'm very emotional myself. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because, hey, maybe I say something that I regret later on. Maybe Mark talks me off the ledge. But that's just who I am. Alan does the same thing. He's been doing it for 34 years. So you guys just welcome to the party here. But yeah, that's who I am, and that's how it's going to be. But do I always like it? No, I don't always like it about myself. But yeah, you know what? I'm still very thankful of where Clemson is at. And I'll say, so another positive, again, Lynn J. Dixon, he didn't get used very much. But 2 rushes for 20 yards, almost had a touchdown, bowled the guy over. And even, ESPN was talking about, wow, Lynn J. Dixon showing that he has some muscle at him, knocking the guy over, almost getting into the end zone. I would have loved to seen Lynn J. Dixon more, two rushes for 20 yards. And then Davis, let me tell you something. There was a series out there early on where Clemson could have gone up, I believe 21-7, but Trevor Lawrence overthrew Davis Allen. I said Davis kind of like it was his last name, but Davis Allen. Trevor Lawrence just missed him. That dude was behind everybody, and so I do feel like there's some positives coming from the defensive tackle side, or from the tight end side of things, and I also feel like there's some positives coming from Lynn J. Dixon if he were to stay. I don't know if he is or not. I know Lynn J. was kind of disappointed that Travis Etienne came back because he was like, man, I'm the next man up. But maybe Lynn J. stays again and tries to do it, tries to make this year his year where he's the star. But in the few games that they've kind of used him more often than not, I've been kind of impressed by what he's done. What do you think, Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lynn J. he came back. Him being in that particular drive where we went up 14-7, where Clemson went up 14-7. Lynn J. Dixon had a really good run. Frank Ladson had a great catch. Being able to see them be utilized again, I think if Lynn J. chooses to come back, you'll be able to see. I think Lynn J. will be utilized a lot more. I think going forward, what Clemson probably needs to consider if Lynn J. is back is maybe examining someone from like the Carolina Panthers under Joe Brady and being able to utilize him more like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm not saying they're the same type of person, but I feel like Lynn J. would be a better receiving running back going forward. I think he's got that type of build and that if you get him out in space, he goes. He may not be like Travis Etienne where he just goes, and if he can find that little crease, he's going to go for 40 yards. He's more of if you get him a flare out or if you put him on a wheel route, he could be a dangerous player. So I think the concepts going forward, some of the changes that you may look for is being able to utilize the running back more as a wide receiver. We started doing that more with Travis Etienne out of a necessity this year, but you have a lot of personnel coming back. You have improving, I believe, what will be an improved offensive line next year. So being able to being able to run the ball consistently while also getting the ball outside on the edges to your running backs as well.
Oh, and Bill gets in and clarifies the not SEOK, which makes sense now, complete sense, because it's actually something I said. So I mentioned, I don't have the tweet up, but I mentioned that I don't want Clemson to become the southeastern version of Oklahoma. And what I really mean by that is that I don't want Clemson to destroy their conference and go 10-0, 11-0, and then lay an egg on national television. I don't ever want that to happen because that's what Oklahoma does. And I make fun of my brother-in-law about it because he's an Oklahoma fan, lived in Oklahoma. I make fun of him all the time about it. Now, will that happen? Maybe not. Maybe I was over-exaggerating, but I don't want it to happen. Believe me, another reason why I don't want it to happen, I know you guys can relate to me, and especially Houston with that hat on. I don't want 17 NL East titles and no World Series, okay? I haven't had a World Series with the Atlanta Braves since 1995, okay? I don't like that. But we've had a ton of pennants, but no World Series. So I'm just saying, maybe I'm panicking. Maybe it's because I'm burned by the Braves, maybe, but I'm just going to put that out there. So, Al, what's your thought?
I guess I'm going back to Lynn J. Dixon. Look, that was a guy I was going to say something positive about because I thought he looked good in the couple runs that he had for sure. I've been kind of bullish on him having more ability than he's shown in the past, and I think that we saw it on Friday night. It was just a couple of carries, but man, he looked good. I love the physicality he showed because that's a side of him I have not seen before. So that was something, man, if he can add the physicality to that arsenal, because I think he's got incredible quickness. And a lot of people, think he runs backwards too much. He's trying to be Spiller and get the extra yards, the home run too much. He can run between the tackles. I've seen it before, and he can do it. And I think he can be really good at it. I'd heard a bunch of stuff on the internet today. This is just internet rumor. None of this is confirmed, but a lot of people are mentioning him maybe looking at the transfer portal which just makes no sense. If he was going to enter the transfer portal, it should have been last year when Etienne decided to come back. I would think he's the leading man in the clubhouse to be, number one running back next season, unless, he or the coaching staff knows something we don't, because I don't think, Ches Malusi is that much better than him, and the freshman coming in certainly can't be that much better than him yet. They may be, but how our coaches trust knowledge of the system. I would think he'd be the number one guy, and this would be his year. So that was kind of concerning to me that, he may be gone, and I think Clemson's gonna be fine in the running back room regardless, whether he leaves or not. Again, due to what Houston said and what I think is going to be better offensive line play. So that's kind of where I'm looking at with things. But yeah, I think we need to utilize him in the passing game, get him in open space, because he can make people miss. He's got a lot of quickness to him, and if he shows that physicality that he showed in the Ohio State game, we're not going to have any problems running forward.
Yeah, I think that I think there's people in chat talking about Ches Malusi. I mean, he is, I think, going to be a bruiser.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing him. Phil Maffa, I know, is another guy that I think Al put in there as well. A guy that we did a video on him and his high school highlights. And it's one of our best videos ever on YouTube, because people are starting to really get some buzz around Phil. And I'm excited to see what he can do as well. I think he had an injury though, so he's coming back from an injury or something like that. But I look forward to seeing what he can do when he gets on campus as well. And going back to kind of what's going to come up next year, I think is a good thing. Like transitioning to, say, the very next day, Clemson lands Tristan Leigh, the 5-star offensive tackle. I think it's a great thing for Clemson and Clemson fans, especially me, to kind of take a step back and think, okay, what were some of the issues? One thing is offensive line. What's something that is stacked and they're just young? The offensive line. There's a ton of offensive linemen there that are just not ready this year, but may very well be ready to go next year. And now they've brought in a 5-star guy that could jump up depending on how good he is coming out immediately. So Clemson is addressing the areas that maybe lacked in this season, which we knew from the beginning. And I told Mark this: if you got smoke in the ACC competition, there's going to be fire when you get in the playoffs. And that smoke was not being able to run the ball. Travis Etienne and Clemson finished with 44 rushing yards. The offensive line was not getting any push. They didn't get any push all year, so it really wasn't a surprise to me. But like I said, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's smoke there. We all could tell it, even against some of the average ACC opponents. Clemson can't really run the ball this year. It seems like Travis Etienne barely gets over 100 yards. Well, he rarely even had 100-yard games. So it was very difficult for Travis to get going. A lot of it had to do with that offensive line, but help is on the way. And I know that's kind of cliche to say, but if you really look at the recruiting that's been going on, Clemson has done very well in that situation. Now, they kind of didn't get very many recruits in, I think, 2017 or 18, but they've made up for it in 19 and 20. And so I think just getting them to that point. Same thing with linebackers. Man, they've got a ton of stud linebackers we just haven't seen yet on the field that are ready and waiting and just trying to get built up. So I'm excited about that too. As far as secondary, there's some guys out there too, RJ Mickens and then Fred Davis, the second, 2 guys that I'm looking forward to see what they can do as well. So there's a lot of areas that are getting addressed. Oh, and by the way, don't even talk about the defensive tackle position. Some people were saying, will Brian Bursey be able to make it to the edge like he was in high school? I don't know where they're going to end up putting him, but I will say that DeMonte Capehart and Trey Williams are going to be fighting for some time for sure. So there's a lot of guys there where the recruiting is going to catch up and fill in some of those needs that kind of showed their face in the playoff game. So I would say day 2, day 3 after the game, take a step back and look. Casey gets in and also says, Shipley, Christian McCaffrey Jr. So there's some guys out there, Phil Maffa, Shipley, Malusi. Don't want to forget Michael Dukes and anybody else that I may have, skipped my mind. But Clemson is definitely recruiting at a high level. They've shown what they can do. They are competing with the best of the best in the nation and bringing in recruits. So I think there's a lot of positives for what's going to happen in the next couple of years. I don't think Clemson's going anywhere. And I don't think anybody needs to fire anybody or let anybody go. And I definitely don't want that at all. And there is some things you have to be aware of as well. It's difficult when you don't have Tony Elliott in the stadium. I mean, Brandon Streeter is great. He's been an offensive coordinator, I believe, at Houston, and I were talking at Richmond, and wasn't bad. But it was actually a very good offensive coordinator. But it was kind of a last minute thing that was sprung up on this team that was a little bit of a distraction, I think. And I would have loved to have seen what Tony Elliott could have done. Maybe he would have done some things differently. But again, I think that they started out great, but then the second quarter happened and it really hurt them, put them behind the 8 ball there, and they couldn't get back out of it. After halftime, I'll say this, guys, and this will be kind of, we'll get into some more topics as well, but there's just so much to unpack with this game. After halftime, Ohio State came out, and I told my friends that were watching with me, I said, if I'm playing Madden, if I get a touchdown after this is basically like the opponent's gonna turn the game off. This is one of those games where you're down, this much with less than a half to go. It's no hope really, right? And I said they need to stop, and they need to be able to score before 7 minutes. Well, that's exactly what Clemson did. Mm-hmm. Ohio State drove down, didn't have any issues till they got in the red zone, and that pressure from Miles Murphy, a guy who's going to be on the team for 2 more years, probably, maybe 4, but got pressure, tipped the ball out of Justin Fields' hands as he was throwing it to Olave, and it dropped right into flopped into Mike Jones's hands for an interception in the end zone. Clemson was able to take that and return with a score and get within 14 at that time. And I think that was a huge, huge play there. Now, there were some other issues happened right after that. There was a fumble from Trevor Lawrence. That was such a weird fumble where he was like holding the ball as he was laying on the ground. It was kind of just weird to watch, because I just felt like all of the hope got sucked out of my body at that point, because I'm like, really, this is the kind of fumble we get where he's laying on his back. I don't know. But I will say, starting out after halftime, I was really, really encouraged to see the defense get a turnover, and then Clemson come out in a really nice 2-minute offense where they threw it to the sidelines real quick to stop the time and keep going and eventually get a touchdown out of it. What'd you think about post-halftime adjustment there?
Look, I was all for it. I thought they did a good job. I thought the exact same thing that you thought. I was like, hey, we can get this stop and we can get a score. We're right back in this game. Clemson's done this before. We can come back from this. We did it this year, in fact, and we got it. And I was like, hey, we've got the ball. We're only down 2 scores. They've got the ball. It's like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, from their own 10-yard line or something like that. All we got to do is get a stop. There's no way they're going to, pick this up. They're rattled, and we're on the comeback trail, and then Sermon runs it down our throats for 10 yards, gets a first down. I mean, it was as disheartening as it could get. I didn't have much hope after that point, and sure enough, it just went downhill from there. But man, you really got to give credit to Ohio State in this game. And I know you want to talk about not being okay with blowouts, and it's okay to not be okay with blowouts. But man, Morgan, I got to tell you, look, we talked about running in the buzzsaw last year with LSU, and that was true. There was nothing false about that. And man, the same thing happened with Ohio State. Justin Fields was chucking these balls 60 yards downfield. I mean, he was just rearing back and throwing it as far as he can, and they were dropping right in the laps of these wide receivers. They weren't having to go up and make big plays. They were dropping in their laps. And look, I know some of our corners look pretty bad, and some of them deserve to look pretty bad on some of those plays, but a lot of times they were right there. At least 2 of the touchdowns, they were all over them, and it was just in the perfect spot. And there's nothing you can do about that. I mean, it's just frustrating when it happens, 2 or 3 times in a game. You don't expect that kind of thing to happen. But Fields played a heck of a game. Ohio State, came to play in the trenches, plain and simple. And it's just kind of one of those tip of the cap things. Kudos to Ohio State for playing a great game. I'm not happy about the blowout, but there's a lot of things. I don't feel like if you played that game several times that we would get blown out every time. I think a lot of it depends on a lot of different things. So I just think they had a great game and, a great game plan. This is an offensive game now. Okay, so you're going to get into shootouts, and if you're not scoring, if you have any kind of off night offensively, you're prone to these blowouts. Okay, look, you can have as good a defense as you want, but the fact of the matter is the offenses are way ahead of the defenses. The penalties they call or don't call make it so that the offensive players have the advantage. It's going that way in every sport because people like to see points scored. So you're going to be prone to blowouts in this kind of system that college football set up.
Yeah, I was. You kind of stole the point I was going to go towards, Alan. I was going to say the tweaks and the changes that I think that Clemson should look forwards to is the changing nature of college football. Is the best teams in the country are going to be able to score at will. Yep. LSU did it once LSU was able to figure out Clemson's defense last year. Brent Venables couldn't do anything about it. Ohio State had a great game plan and just crammed it down our throat and just did anything they wanted to our defense. Okay. I think what Clemson needs to turn their attention to going forward is how to make their offense look and emulate that. And then we've done that before. Clemson's done that before. In 2011, they hired Chad Morris, and they went along with what everybody was doing in college football and going to an up-tempo spread offense. Well, now it's, okay, you're at the level. Clemson is at the level of Ohio State, Alabama, top of the top. Now Clemson has to figure out how to basically be an offense that scores at will and a defense that can be able to hold up just enough. All right. Alabama's defense is not great. Ohio State's defense isn't that great. They have 444 total yards, but they did just enough. LSU's defense was the same last year. They weren't great, but they were able to do just enough. So if Clemson can emulate that, score, know that when Clemson steps out on the field, they can score at will. All right. And then a defense that's able to do just enough against the best of the best, Clemson will be right back where they're at.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, really when you take a step back at it, like I said, it's easy to get frustrated, especially in the moment, especially for me. But you take a step back, you look at where Clemson is going, you look at the issues that Clemson had, and we'll get into some of the issues and how Clemson can adjust that. And we'll talk about the issues. We'll air our grievances. The second half of the show, last 15 minutes of the show, we'll air our grievances. But before we do that, let me tell you about a few other sponsors, our other sponsors for our show, and then we'll wrap it up with our final segment of just kind of airing our grievances out there. But first up, Charleston Sports Pub of Clemson, downtown Clemson, 359 College Avenue, Clemson, South Carolina. They've been a sponsor for us for quite some time now. We've had a live show there, really loved the atmosphere. When we went there, we not only got to meet and see T. Higgins as he was getting on his way to the NFL, but we also got to play some golf. Mark Childers, Alan, and I all played some golf at Pebble Beach in their golf simulator inside, and it was beautiful, high definition projector. And they also have a few other games there, but the bar atmosphere is great. The food is great. They treated us, Perry there, awesome atmosphere, awesome people. And not only just in Clemson as well. If you're a Tiger fan in Greenville, they have one in downtown Greenville. You can go check them out. And then if you're a Tiger fan down, maybe say in James Island or in, I don't know, Charleston, you can go check them out there as well. They have locations, I think about 6 locations now all over the state of South Carolina. So go check them out, support them. They support us. And then Tiger Sports Shop, we don't just dress for success, we TS for success. Tigersports.com. We're all wearing Tiger Sports gear, from my Columbia Clemson hat to my Deshaun Watson Nike jersey to Allen's polo and Houston's button-up. We are all wearing Tigersports.com. We support them. They support us. And the way we got this partnership, you wonder, how did Morgan and Allen get this partnership with Tiger Sports Shop? Well, we're good friends with Julie and Sean there, but we shopped there ourselves before they were our sponsor. And we decided, hey, if we're going to shop here exclusively because we love them so much, why not tell them about our podcast? So that's how we got together, because we already shop there. So we're not just telling you to go there because they're our sponsor. We shop there already. And then another one is Daniel Weber State Farm, 518 College Avenue, Suite 190, Clemson, South Carolina, 864-722-9083, insuringclemson.com. Daniel Weber State Farm, for all your insurance need, auto, home, property, business, life, banking, annuities. Daniel Weber is a class of 2011, 4th generation Clemson University graduate. So go check him out there. Lots of great Google reviews. They say the office is amazing. Their people are friendly, and they'll do anything they can to help support you in your financial needs and insurance needs as well. And then we have Heating Cooling Services, Inc., another friend of the show, Mark and Jason Trammell over there. They not only do heating for the winter, but they also do cooling in the summer. And Alan will tell you a little bit more about them, but 864-224-7655.
Yeah, what are you doing? All right, just put the logo up there and let me do this. Okay, this is the one I get to do the whole time. All right, relax over there. So, Heating Cooling Services Inc. serving Anderson County and surrounding area since 1980. Heating Cooling Services Inc. is your residential and commercial comfort expert. Anything from preventative maintenance of your home HVAC system to overhauling a commercial chiller or anything in between. If you want to breathe easier and be nice and cool in your home or business this summer, or cozy and warm in your home or business this winter, give Heating Cooling Services Inc. a call. You're going to want to talk to Mark or Jason Tram on their numbers 864-224-7655. As it says on the screen, make sure you pay attention to that number and tell them that the Morgan Thomas Show sent you.
Thanks again, Al. I should let you do that. Houston, we need to get you one. All right.
Yeah, I'm still hunting one down.
Why don't we get the Charleston Sports Pub next week? You get the Charleston Sports Pub.
Yeah, or if you've got a business that you want to be sponsored by the Morgan Thomas Show and you're watching out in Facebook or YouTube land, hit me up on my DMs on Facebook or Twitter, which I wish we could have my Twitter handle up on the screen, Morgan, but I won't say anything else. Yeah.
Well, and I was really
hoping that is your name.
And for Paul's as a sponsor, but after what I said Friday night, I doubt he'll ever forgive me again. But I will tell you, the fish and chips, wonderful. I ate fish and chips there at least 2 or 3 times. I gotta tell you, best place for fish and chips. I don't know what you like there, Big Al, but that's what I get. if I find what I like, I stick with it. I don't venture out.
Yep. That's understandable. I'm the same way. I love their club sandwich. So, but their bird dogs are great as well. Their burgers are awesome too. So I've had all that stuff. Those are kind of my go-tos.
And they're not a sponsor. We just love Bill because he's a big time fan of our show and he's always here every Monday night. So, but let's get into kind of the negative. What did Clemson do wrong? What could they have do differently? I watched the game again today. I took the day off because it's my birthday, and I spent my day off watching a loss. That especially on my birthday, watching a Clemson loss, not how I wanted to spend it, but I did it for the viewers. I did it for the podcast. Definitely not how I wanted to do it. And I have since deleted it from my DVR. Will not watch it again. Not going back. I actually have never watched a replay of the LSU game or the Alabama game where Alan and I were there in attendance. I have not watched the replay of that. And when I saw it on ESPN as a replay, I purposely either turned the channel or walked out of the restaurant that was playing it. That's how bad I don't want to watch a Clemson loss. But first thing is, and I'm seeing this in chat a lot, guys, and we'll start it off. What did Clemson do wrong, offense and defense, and how can we maybe think that they would correct it, or what's going to be corrected by it, right? My first thing is when I watched the game back, it really was. I hate to say this, and Dabo admitted this. He did not coach his team up the right way. But when you have like James Skalski and Malcolm Green and Landon Zanders and Mike Jones, like looking at each other lost on some of these plays, and then you have like a 32-yard touchdown run where Justin Maskell wasn't in position and the defensive line wasn't in their stance. That kind of makes you like scratch your head. Like, what is Brent Venables' defense doing tonight? As I rewatched it, it looked even worse. I'd hate to be these players who have to watch it 10, 15 times because, man, they're going to be pretty ticked off because I don't like watching it. But my first thought is, do you think that what caused the defense to be kind of like confused in that second quarter alone, for sure? I'll start with you, Houston.
Well, if you think about it, this has been kind of a long time coming. This is something that started in 2017 with Syracuse. Alabama didn't have to worry about it in 2017 because they could just line it up and ram it down our throats the first time we went to New Orleans. But in 18, you want me to tell you who really set this game plan in motion was South Carolina. They were able to throw a couple really weird wrinkles into their formation. They made it to where Brent Venables couldn't get his call in time, and then went up and down the field on Clemson's defense. And that got masked later on. Clemson was able to win the national title, so we didn't worry about it. And we still continued not to worry about it until last year when LSU did the exact same thing again. And then this year, what happens again? There are some inferior teams that tried to do it, like Virginia Tech, where they tried to get the line as quickly as possible, tried not to let Brent Venables get his call in time. It's just they didn't have the players to do it. Ohio State did. And I think the tweak here, like I said, it's just tweaks. And Brent Venables, I know if he's able to tweak a defense from going from a 4-man front to a 3-man front in 2019 because we didn't have the personnel necessarily to do what we wanted to normally do, then he can tweak his defense again. And I don't know if this is going to be something that he does where maybe we're going with a quicker call in and we're not waiting as much, because this has been 4 years in the making, essentially, and this is what's come to fruition. So maybe there's a little bit of a dial back and say, hey, look, we need to get everybody in position as quickly as possible. All right. We know that people might throw funky formations out with us, but X, Y, and Z needs to happen as quickly as possible, because now that the rapid speed of college football is happening, we need to have people in place now and get these particular position groups in place. That'll help a lot of things. That'll help with your pass rush. That'll help with your secondary. I also think Clemson, especially if Clemson has a couple of people come back, whether it's Xavier Thomas, which I don't know if he's going to come back or not, or KJ Henry. If you have two solid defensive ends and Brzee and Tyler Davis, you need to go back to going to a 4-man front. Clemson has the talent to do a 4-man front, and I think that's the thing that drives me the most crazy. It's cute, it's great to do a 3-man front, but it's going to get you killed by a team like Ohio State, who's got a running back who is a jackhammer. All right. They've done it 2 years in a row. J.K. Dobbins hammered us, and we were able to actually adjust. This year, no adjustments. Ohio State killed us. They killed Clemson, and I think that part of the reason is Clemson has to be able to adjust quicker and be able to get their plays in quicker than what they were doing.
Yeah, look, this should not be a surprise to anybody. This has happened several times. It's happened against Syracuse teams. It's happened against North Carolina teams, years ago in the ACC championship, and you're just not ready, and we're screaming at the TV, what are you guys doing? This is what Brent Venables does. He sees what the offense is doing. He tries to get that perfect play calling at the last second. Okay, so we have to take, the 90% good of Brent Venables and just deal with this 10% sometimes when he's not getting the calls in quick enough. It's just frustrating that it happened to happen against a team as good as Ohio State. And not only that, but in the college football playoff. It's frustrating. I don't like it. I wish they would just start off saying, hey, this is your base defense for this play. Get in it. Then I'll start looking and see if I can adjust the play. And if I have enough time to adjust it, great. Otherwise, we're still in position. It's kind of what Houston was mentioning, getting into our base defense 4-3, which is what I think I prefer. I prefer a 4-3. I don't think they're going to get away from the 3-4. I think especially with the transfer of Jordan Williams and Niles Pinckney, even though I don't think that's really going to affect the overall team. I think that could affect the fact that we're going to probably still use some 3-4 because of maybe some lack of depth at DT, or proven depth, I guess I should say. And they like the blitz packages that adds as well, the 3-4. They like being able to bring Trenton Simpson on some of those blitzes and whatnot. So I think we're still going to see the 3-4, but I love a 4-3. I wish they would stay in it and make that their base kind of defense so they wouldn't have to be caught off guard. And you know what? If they're not running hurry up, if they're not doing what Ohio State did, then you can have time to adjust. You can get that perfect play call in, and that's cool. And we'll be all good with it. But yeah, this shouldn't be a surprise. It's happened before. Like I said, it's just kind of unfortunate the way it happened and the way it seemed to bite us.
Chat talking about the personnel as well. On that play that I saw where they weren't even ready, and right. Trey Sermon chewed off 32 yards. They were in a 3-man down lineman formation. And not only that, personnel decision of taking out Mike Jones. I don't know if he was injured at that time or what, or just didn't play that down, but subbing him for Malcolm Green. So basically you have 3 down linemen, and then you have 1 less linebacker. So you have 1 less defensive tackle, 1 less linebacker, and you sub him out with Malcolm Green, who's younger, and him and Landon Sanders could not set the edge. I mean, when they got blocked by that big giant 88 or one of those offensive linemen, it looked like a child being blocked. I mean, I hate to say that because those guys are like 6'1", 200 pounds. But compared to Ohio State's offensive line, they looked like they were going to get squashed. It looked like a murder. My brother-in-law called me and he's like, I thought I was going to watch a football game. I'm watching a murder here. And because of some of the way the defense lined up or didn't line up, and some of the personnel out there, it was kind of like head scratching. Like, is this the defense we need out here? And get screwed up over and over by Trey Sermon, who I mentioned this last week, guys. You didn't believe me. You didn't agree with me. But Trey Sermon, the one guy to be scared of. Who said it? I said it. The one guy to be scared of, Trey Sermon. He got better as the last two games happened of the season. And man, he came. If you want to talk about a guy who had a chip on his shoulder, in front of a national crowd, knew he had an elbow and a knee down, got back up and kept running, and then kind of like winked at the camera. That guy was ready to bowl over Clemson. He mentally wanted to embarrass Clemson, and unfortunately, kind of did. And so I'm just kind of was concerned, like what was some of the players doing out there? They just looked so confused. Also, Nolan Turner came out after halftime, and it's not his fault. He had the targeting. He missed an entire quarter. But two of the biggest passes of the second half, Nolan Turner was like 20 yards behind. And there was one that Chris Olave missed. It was overthrown. It was wide open touchdown. And Nolan Turner let him go by. Well, it wasn't Nolan Turner, excuse me. It was Tyler Venables. It was Tyler Venables. So that secondary was like just letting these guys go by them. But I think it's not always. I said this in Twitter as well. It's not always jumping on the secondary, because you're talking that Olave or Garrett Wilson touchdown. I can't remember which one, but it was like 50, 60 yards when he caught it. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of time from when the ball got hiked to when he caught the ball. I mean, if you think 4 or 5 seconds in pads to run 40 yards and he catches it at the 50, 55, 60-yard mark, Justin Fields was sitting there with all freaking day sometimes to throw the ball. They couldn't get penetration, and it goes back to that three-man front. They definitely couldn't get penetration. And when they had three and they had to blitz somebody, what did they do? They gave up somebody covering Trey Sermon, and he was there for the dump off and got, ate up a bunch of yards. So it just seemed like the defense was all over the place. I don't really know what the answer is. I'm not a football schemer. I'm not a coach myself. I'm not going to claim to be that, but it just seemed like it was really shocking that at least the plays and the personnel that was out there just seemed kind of like off to me. So let us know what you think in chat. Al said, yeah, he saw Turner as well. Let me look up some of the other bullet points that I had. It's hard to say because I know chat said this thing about offense. I complained mostly about the offense on to my friends and on Twitter, but the offense on average was putting out 500 something yards a game. They had like 400 something, right? Close to 500. Well,
I can complain.
I know. But the defense, on the other hand, on average was giving up like 300 and something yards. And this was 600 yard plus, So who was completely out of balance? Definitely the defense. But I also can agree with Alan, and Walt Deptula will tell you this, from night and day. It's an offensive game nowadays. So it shouldn't, Alabama does not care how many points somebody else puts up because they're going to outscore you. That's kind of their thing this year, and it's been working for them. And you saw against Ole Miss, just, hey, we don't care how many points we give up. We're just going to score more than you. And that's kind of a little disappointment because Clemson can't do that. I think they can't do that because the offensive line is not where it needs to be. They've lost a lot and had to replace a lot. And they have a lot of young guys there. They're still figuring things out. And the running game's not there for sure. We've known that since day one for this team. But also, we also got to admit, too, there's no Justin Ross. Joseph Ngata, don't count him out, kind of like a Cornell Powell type guy, but he's been injured all year and hasn't played at all. Ladson was on the field, got a catch for a first down, and then I don't ever remember seeing him after that. So it's been the weapons haven't been there like they normally have been on the offensive side of things. Al, I'll get your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Bill gets in and just some breaking news, by the way. Amari Rodgers declared for the draft. I don't think anybody didn't see that coming. Everybody knew he was kind of going to be gone. Kudos to him. Congrats to him. Great career here, man. He really went out with a bang this year, too, as well. I mean, it's going to be tough replacing him for sure in the slot next year, whether that's going to be, a Brennan Spector, whether it's going to be, a Troy Stellato. Somebody like that. Not really sure who's going to do that. Could one of the current, receivers kind of move inside? Not really sure. Most of the guys we have right now that we think are going to start are kind of well suited to the outside. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But we want to congratulate him and thank him for being a great Tiger. So it was a lot of fun watching his career here as well. But yeah, look, I agree with a lot of what you were saying. It was, out of balance. It was the defense that was kind of way behind, and it's tough to watch. It's really difficult to understand how you can best fix that. And again, I'm not some defensive scheme guy, but again, I can tell you this. When I see the three-man front, I cringe a little bit because I know that bad things are going to happen, and bad things happen. And look, I think you mentioned something about one of our plays where, everybody was out of position, and this happened. Again, this happened several times on Friday night, so it's hard to distinguish which one's which. But on Ohio State's first touchdown, Sermon, scored kind of running up the middle. And poor Trenton Simpson, he wasn't being able to stand up. He wasn't big enough to stand up against those Ohio State guys either, not to mention the fact he was being held like crazy on that run up the middle. There wasn't holding called all night until it didn't matter. That was kind of a frustrating thing to watch. Ohio State played too well to say we lost because of holding calls. That's nonsense. Let's not go down that road by any means. But there were definitely no holding flags until Clemson was down, 21 with 5 minutes left. I remember they called one there at the very end. So that's tough to deal with when it's already an offensive game. You've got things like the targeting call where you can't even tackle anybody now. If we want to talk about the James Skalski targeting call, people like to, have been complaining about that. There's been fights on the internet. It wasn't targeting. Look, listen, by definition, the Skalski hit was targeting. Okay. It's a terrible rule. We all know that. It needs to be changed. It should never have been implemented the way it is. It's complete garbage. I think if you watch the replay, you'll see Skalski goes to make a big football play, and I think he was going to hit him with his shoulder, and Justin Fields spins into his helmet. Okay? That's just the way it goes. Okay? But he led with his helmet, and that's what made the call happen. Okay? It doesn't have to be to the head or neck area if you lead with the crown of your helmet. What bothers me so much about this rule, besides the fact that it's nonsense and it's a football game, is you see people try to target all the time. You see people going to the ground, and these secondary guys just fly in and launch themselves with their helmets, and they just miss. They just miss the pile because they've already fallen to the ground. They've been tackled by one of their other teammates. But because they didn't actually hit them, they don't get called for it. So I think they have to find some kind of way to measure intent. And if they can't find a way to measure intent, you need to give a warning. It's got a 15-yard penalty. The next one gets you ejected, something like that, because this rule is nonsense. But yes, the Skalski thing was targeting, and that makes it very difficult when you're trying to deal with the fact that you're getting held. You can't make plays. When you finally do get to make a play, you get ejected from the game. This game is going offensive. It's already offensive. Alabama is showing that because Alabama scores 50 points a game. Okay. That's what Clemson's going to have to do. So Clemson's going to have to get more aggressive, more creative with their play calling, get the tight ends involved. I mean, Houston's been talking about that all year. And I think that's just how you're going to have to win going forward. The defense, like Houston was saying, is going to have to do just enough. And I think they can. We're talented enough to do that. But it's an offensive game. Make no mistake. All the rules are being skewed to the offense, and we need to make sure that we can keep up.
Tag me in. Okay. Don't take too much of my thunder. I think I can complain a little bit about offense, and I said this has been a long time coming for Clemson's defense. This has been the same for the offense, and it started in 2017. And ironically enough, I think it started with our Kelly Bryant team, with Clemson's Kelly Bryant team. And I know that the Clemson offense then was not as dominant as it was with Trevor. I think I'm not saying that at all, but how many games in 2017 were we playing an inferior opponent and we just kind of just did some base things, went 3 and out, and ended up winning a game 24-10 or 28-14 against a team that Clemson could beat 52-0 at that point, 52-10. And it kind of carried over. You didn't really do it in 2018 when Clemson had that one scare against Syracuse. It's almost like it lit a fire, and they didn't have to do a ton offensive creativity wise. They just crammed it down people's throat with Travis Etienne. and got the ball out, a very simplified playbook for Trevor to Justin Ross and Amari Rogers and T. Higgins, and just threw it up to those guys and let them do it. Well, the way that things are changing now, and it got exposed in LSU, that offense doesn't necessarily work when you're dealing with a very talented team with like a Derek Stingley or Sean Wade or someone like that. They're going to have talented secondaries. So the scripted plays that Clemson ran the other night were great. Got to the outside, you studied them enough to where you did that. But then after that, it's just kind of like, well, what do we do now? Clemson has to have a killer mentality when it comes to getting past the scripted plays. All right. And if that means a simplified playbook that almost like what LSU, and I think what Ohio State did too, they don't have a ton of plays. It wasn't like LSU or Ohio State in the last 2 years did some amazing thing that Clemson's never seen before. They just did it better and quicker than Clemson had seen with better athletes. They sold every route. They ran it 1,000%. They hit every block. They hit every pass, and they made Clemson pay for it. LSU did that to every single team and went 15-0 and beat the brakes off of everybody. Ohio State in an 8-game season, nobody's touched them really, including Clemson. So it's almost like you just need to simplify things. Clemson would make itself really well if, like I said, whoever the OC is, whether it's Tony Elliott, Brandon Streeter, you can marry a few concepts in the run game as well to make this a more smash mouth version of it. But someone needs to drive up to Charlotte and pick Joe Brady's brain. Somebody needs to do that because it's a very simplified offense. It's not a lot of eye candy. You can do eye candy if you want to get a flea flicker in there or whatever, but simplify the offense, attack people vertically, and it doesn't have to be long balls. 15, 20-yard passes downfield really opens things up. Throw the ball to the running backs in the flat, and honestly, you can score a ton of points that way.
Talking about eye candy, I wrote this down. Trevor Lawrence did a quarterback counter, where he kind of does that little, not going this way, going this way, got tackled behind the line of scrimmage and fumbled the ball. The very next series, when Clemson needs to move the ball, they run the ball up the middle. Time is almost over in the third quarter. You're down by 3. You don't have time to play around. Clemson can come back. I told Audrey this. Clemson can come back from 14 in the fourth quarter. Heck, Deshaun Watson did it. Okay? So 14 points can be overcome in the fourth quarter. 21, especially when you got just a few minutes left in the third quarter, you needed it. What did they do? They run the ball up the middle, and then they do that same quarterback counter play, and he gets tackled behind the line of scrimmage again. And it's like, well, thank goodness he didn't get fumbled. But why are you going back to that play of all plays and not going back to, I don't know, maybe the Amari Rogers shovel pass that got you 9 yards in the first quarter? I don't know.
The other thing,
and then they ran it to the outside, and it was like 3 run plays, and then that was the end of the third quarter. They did 3 run plays. Frustrated me so much. End of the third quarter, Dabo says, which we all knew it was going to happen, got to go for it on 4th down, 4th and 3. Matt Bockhorst, false start. Oh my God. And you know what I said? You know what I said in Twitter? Might as well still go for it. You might as well still go for it because you don't have any time. Your time's over with because if you had a chance, you should have done that 2-minute warning kind of play that you did right after halftime, but you come out and do 3 run plays. I mean, I know I am not the coach. I'm not the offensive coordinator, but I think anybody watching that was probably frustrated and like, hey, why are we not running the 2-minute drill here? Yeah. But that was another bullet point I had on here. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would be interested in speaking of before we finish the show tonight. But I do want to air this one out. Trevor Lawrence, you were talking about scripted plays. Trevor Lawrence got called out by Kirk Herbstreit, and you could tell the defensive secondary for Ohio State was starting to like chirp at him on the field because there were a couple of those 3rd down plays and even 2nd down plays where when he hiked the ball, he already knew who he was going to throw it to. And I'll tell you, Go back and look at the one where they actually did get a touchdown. They did get a touchdown, so it ended up good. But it was a crossing route with E.J. Williams to the left and Cornell Powell to the right. Trevor Lawrence never looked at Cornell Powell. Never. He hiked it and immediately looked and threw at EJ, who was double covered. And Cornell Powell was wide open. And Cornell was so mad. He was like, you could see him like throwing his hands out like, look at me, look at me. And I think Trevor, at least in that game, you could tell if you go back and watch, which I don't recommend it. Please don't do it. But you could tell it was like Trevor was going to throw to that guy no matter what. Another play that I'll tell you about is the third down play where he threw it behind Etienne's head, and it was a fourth down punt, and Etienne was double covered in that one, and the ball was hiked, and he didn't even have it. You say, well, the offensive line didn't hold up for him. He didn't even give the play enough time to even develop. Like the ball was hiked, and he looked and he threw. I mean, it was like no time given for Amari Rodgers to come across or Cornell Powell to come across or whatever. It was a little bit frustrating from Trevor, considering that he's such an elite quarterback. I don't know what he was doing on some of those plays. And like I said, I'm not going to pretend I have the answers, but I'm just going to say that's what I saw out there. Very frustrating as a Clemson fan, especially when and I think it comes back to this. It gets more frustrating, especially when you're an emotional fan like I am. But it gets more frustrating when you know how good Trevor and Travis are. I knew this was like the last season with them. So I just cherish them so much. I want them to do so well and win it all and win every single year and not lose any games. And so, you know what? I apologize. I mean, hey, I got emotional. I got hurt. I even said it on Twitter. Hey, don't take it personal, anybody out there. I'm just hurting for the team. I'm hurting for myself as a fan. But yeah, let us know what you got in the comments. I appreciate it. Before we go, did want to talk about something positive as well, and that's the Clemson basketball team. Have you guys watched this team? I actually went back and watched the Miami game, close one, and it's really nice. Alan, how many years have we been on this show? 2, by the way, in case you were wondering. How many times, though, have we been on this show and talked about a Clemson basketball team not being able to get over the hump at the end of the game or losing by just 2 possessions? Mm-hmm. And to be able to see Clemson, go toe-to-toe, possession to possession with Miami and come out with the win was really nice. And it was really cool to see Amir Sims and PJ Hall, like young and old, just working so well together. Also coupled in with Nick Honor, who, I mean, he's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've watched the team a good bit. I mean, I used to go to all the basketball games, and it's something I like. I love Clemson basketball. I love Clemson baseball too, as you all know. So it was great to see. I've been relatively underwhelmed with Amir Sims this year, but he had a breakout game with Miami, and it's about time because that's what we need from him. We just need Amir Sims to be Amir Sims. We need him to be a senior leader and consistent in scoring. And he's always going to get his points, but he doesn't always get 25, and that was a big game from him for sure. So it was nice to see. I like the youth of PJ Hall. I like what he does. I think he needs to see some more time as well. And look, the fact is, Miami has not been a kind place to Clemson. It was a great win for them to sneak one out. And we didn't have John Newman in this game, nor did we have Hunter Tyson, because Hunter Tyson's still, I guess, nursing back that face injury where he got kneed in the face. Goodness gracious, that was one of the most brutal things I've seen in sports. So good luck to him getting back. We want all the well wishes to him for sure. But John Newman's a big part of what Clemson does. His athleticism really provides a lot of offensive support, in the lane, and a lot of rebounding. We need to see some things from him for sure and get him back in the game. I think he was sick. I don't think it was COVID related. I think he was just sick. But yeah, Nick Honor's been huge. Trapp is a great rebounder. We need to get some more consistent scoring out of Trapp. And Alamir Dawes, he's a great point guard. We've got a lot of things we can work around with him. It's nice to have 2 guys that can handle the ball on the court at the same time, which Honor and he can do, or he and Trapp, whoever it may be. But yeah, Clemson's looking pretty good this year, which we predicted. If we listen to this show, we've talked about how good we thought Clemson was going to be, and it's nice to see it taking over the court right now. Yeah,
I agree. I think that this is finally one of the teams that Brad Brownell This is a true like Brad Brownell identity offense. Brad Brownell, great rebounding team. That's the most refreshing thing to me about this. Isn't just the ability to score, but the fact that Clemson gets after it on the boards. PJ Hall, man, that kid's a stud. I don't want to compare him to one of the all-time greats. Like he would be the equivalent of like a Sammy Watkins or a CJ Spiller. I don't think he's that big, but at the same time, he's probably one of the best players Clemson's gotten in a long time. Pair him with a lot of budding players that we got last year, Alamir Dawes, Chase Hunter, and Amir Sims is playing well this year. I think Clemson could potentially compete to not only be a top seed in the ACC, but potentially win the ACC considering how down it is this year, and maybe even make a late run in the NCAA tournament.
Bill gets in and says that they could go 2-0 in Chapel Hill in this decade, which, you know, after all those years, and I changed the look here, guys. Casey's probably laughing at me right now because I'm using StreamYard for the first time, and I'm like clicking all these buttons, trying out these new things here. But got Bill up there. He said decade, not century. But yeah, I mean it. I watched that game with my 5-year-old daughter when they won, and you know, I was just jumping up and down, and you could tell she was like clueless. Like, what, Dad? Why are you so happy? You know, I'm like, babe, you do not understand. But so we could do it again. Clemson could do it again. So I'm excited to see what the Tigers can do. Bill Clinton, by the way, is watching our show. He gets in and he says, Al, did you have something to say? I transitioned to basketball, but he says that you were kind of raising your hand, or maybe you had something to say there towards the end about my rant that I was doing at the end.
Oh man, who is? If I knew who Bill Clinton was, I could make this connection to something. He's over on
YouTube. It's obviously not the real Bill Clinton, but maybe it is.
Thanks for that, Morgan. Houston did raise his hand. Houston had something to say.
I did have two quick points on the rant. One with the running plays. I think you want to pick people's brains about being crisp and in a way that you can simplify the run game and be in a unique manner. Well, look no further in this state than someone who's actually been with a Clemson program before. Go pick Willie Corn's brain. And look, if Tony Elliott leaves for the NFL, maybe hire him. You know, do something like that to bring him aboard, not to make him. I mean, we want to keep we want to keep Brandon Streeter, obviously, but let's marry some concepts here and make Clemson's offense elite. And look, people might not like what I'm about to say, but I feel like this needs to be said.
Mute him.
I think this needs to be the quietest, outside of positive news, this needs to be the quietest offseason Clemson's ever had. Given the fact that, look, I know Dabo said some truthful things in what he said up to the Ohio State game, but that didn't help us. It just didn't. And I think the good things that need to come out of this, if there's a recruit that comes in, if there's something positive about the program, graduation rate, whatever, you can blast that all over. But last year was just a long year when it comes to Dabo in the news. And I think the best thing for him this year, stay out of it. Like, try your best to stay out of it. And I think that's the first step that you need to take in really building this program and fueling your fire to go into week one and beating the nonsense out of Georgia.
Yeah. And I will say this with regards to, we had Al Kuhn. I wanted to get this real quick. I know we could talk on this forever, but I'm just going to do it kind of as a parting remark here. You know, people want to talk about Dabo and his, you know, ranking Ohio State 11 and did that affect the game or whatever, bulletin board material, all that stuff. And I got to tell you, you know, Dabo's just being consistent with what he said all year. And and I said this on the show last week, is the fact that, you know, he said that there's not enough tape out there. There's, you know, to rank somebody that's only plays 6 games in the top 10. And that's fair. He's been like that all year. And I don't think he should back off that. Otherwise he wouldn't be true to himself. And that's what Dabo is. So I don't think it provided that much material for the game. I mean, because I believe I was listening to Walt this afternoon and he made a great point, in my opinion. If that was going to affect the game, it was going to be in the first couple of series of the game. And Clemson dominated the first few series of the game. Okay, so I think if it was going to come into play, that's when it comes to play. And then the emotion, you know, is kind of out of it and the football takes over. And so I don't really think it had all that much effect. But, yeah, I think he needs to stay out of the news. The problem is, will people let him stay out of the news? They always seem to find something or make up something, which is going on a lot this offseason too. And the last thing I wanted to say before I hang up and let Morgan send us off for the night is we're talking about the offensive game, and we're talking about the Skowski hit and targeting and how they are forcing you to tackle a certain way. Everybody is so scared to hit above the waist because of a potential targeting call. It's getting ridiculous. So what do? They go low and tackle around the legs. And what happens? These players are hurdling them, and they're getting put on ESPN over and over again. Look what this guy did. It's like, yeah, but he might not have been able to do that had we been able to tackle him without fear of getting a targeting call. They are pushing everything to the offensive player. It's nonsense. It's got to change. It's going to kill the game. I mean, because who's going to want to get, put as a highlight reel on ESPN because you got hurdled? Okay, it's going to lead to all kind of nonsense, and I just can't stand it. I wish they would realize that we're playing a game of football and let them play. But there's a lot that needs to change. A lot Clemson needs to do better, and they can get better at for next year. But I think they're going to be right back in the playoffs next year, and hopefully we'll have something better to talk about then.
Well said, fellas, and great show. Like I said, the emotional support, definitely I need it because I'm an emotional fan. But well said. Thank you so much on Facebook. Our regulars, if you're a newbie on Facebook, make sure that you like and follow our Facebook page, The Morgan Thomas Show, but also share it with your friends. We'd love to have more Tiger fans join us. We had consistently over 50 live viewers out there, so really appreciate it. I'm actually seeing like both at the same time for the first time ever. So I might stay in this StreamYard thing. This is pretty nice. I'm seeing that we have 50 total. We've had up to 70. So thank you so much for getting in tonight and being a part of the show. Whatever section you saw, if you want to see any replays, you can go over to our YouTube channel as well. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We put out some additional content out there. So please do so as well. And again, Bill mentioned this earlier, Amari Rogers declaring for the NFL. We got some players that are going to be transferring and continuing their college careers, elsewhere. But once a Tiger, always a Tiger. And we want to wish them well, whether they're going to the NFL, whether they're graduating and getting a real job like all of us, or whether they're going to another team to continue their dreams of being a football player. We all wish them well. We all want to say go Tigers. We all want to thank them for their efforts this season for sure. Because I will say this, as much as people have been going back and forth about what Clemson should have done or shouldn't have done, I didn't see anybody talk like they did in 2015, where they claimed that Clemson didn't put it all out there. Alan, you remember when you and I left Arizona, there were some fans out there, I think, that were saying like, they didn't leave it all out there. They didn't put the full effort. That really ticked me off. And I went off. This was before we had a show, but I went off on fans about that because you can't say those guys didn't give their 110% effort, especially if you weren't in that stadium. And Alan and I were there, and you could tell they freaking gave it their all and lost in Arizona, but they redeemed themselves out of Phoenix, out of the ashes, came from Phoenix, in Phoenix, and won in Tampa after that. So again, great effort from the Clemson Tiger football team. Thank you so much for everything you've done. This senior class, man, the winningest class? I don't know. I'm not Tim Beret here, but the best class, one of the best classes in the history of college football to do what they did. And so we want to thank them for giving us something to talk about. By the way, if it wasn't for this class, we might not have had college football altogether, because they were front and center from day one, touting that they wanted to play football, not only getting the rest of the ACC on board, the SEC on board, but also Justin Fields. As much as he's a rival on the field, he was hugging those Clemson Tiger guys afterwards. And you got to know that Fields knows that if it wasn't for Trevor Lawrence and the other guys that really pushed it, he might not have had a season as well. So want to thank what they did. If the media said it couldn't be done, well, here we are a few days away from the national championship game. And I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful that we did have a college football season because, I like doing this show, and I'm thankful that you guys are here with us as well. But again, thank you so much. The show's not over. We don't end after football. We're now going to transition over to more basketball, more recruiting, and even softball and baseball as it comes around. Alan is like the resident baseball in Houston as well, resident baseball experts. So they're looking forward to what the spring sports come up. But again, thank you so much for the love and support. We hope you have a good rest of the night. We hope you had a great new year. And thank you for the happy birthday wishes as well. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.